First, we would like to apologize that we weren't able to attend earlier sessions. We got an exhibition opening tomorrow. This is the last of Pirate Care events, so we've been busy doing that. Second, we would like to thank for this invitation to Peter, as well as organizing institutions, Akademie der Künste, Goethe-Institut in Slovakia, and Transmediale. We'll split our session. I'll talk first for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then I'll hand it over to Marcell. We are happy to answer any questions. From what we understand, there will be a chance to put forward questions in the concluding panel. So Peter has already said a little bit about our Pirate Care project. Pirate Care project is a project that Valeria Graziano, Marcell, and I have convened with the objective to map and connect collective practices that are emerging in response to the neoliberal crisis of care. Throughout our lives, we depend on the support of our families, friends, strangers, and institutions to sustain ourselves and to sustain the world in which we and the future generations have to live. That interdependency of humans and non-human nature in both social and ecological reproduction defines the relations of care, and the effort to sustain those relations defines the labor of care. Yet over the last couple of decades of so-called financial global capitalism, the convergence of processes that include the rollout of workfare, rollback of reproductive rights, austerity measures, and criminalization of migration have denied that vital support to many. In response to that denial, making lives disposable, practices we have called pirate care are organizing to help migrants survive at sea and on land, provide pregnancy terminations where those are illegal, offer health support where institutions fail, self-organized childcare where public provision does not extend to everyone, and liberate knowledge where access is denied. Crucially, all of these practices share a willingness to openly disobey laws, legal regimes, and executive orders whenever these stand in the way of safety and solidarity, and politicize that disobedience to contest the legal and political status quo. That disobedience and that politicization is what defines them as pirate care, in our view. It needs to be noted that caring is not intrinsically nice. It always involves power relations and processes of discipline, exclusion, and harm. It is a necessary and skilled form of labor that is shouldered by workers, mostly unwaged women and migrants, who themselves receive the least amount of care while serving those who take care labor for granted. Reciprocity and solidarity are not implied. To address this asymmetry, practices of pirate care are experimenting with forms of self-organization, alternative approaches to social reproduction, and the commoning of tools. Our project specifically aims to activate collective learning processes from the situated knowledges of these practices. In this, we have been inspired by the phenomenon of hashtag Syllabi, that is, crowdsourced online syllabi created by social movements in response to situations of intense antagonism, such as hashtag Ferguson Syllabus or Gaming and Feminism Syllabus, both created in 2014, Trump 101 and Trump Syllabus 2.0, created in 2015 when Trump was elected as the US president, or hashtag Standing Rock Syllabus, created in 2016. We have written about this phenomenon in our article, Learning from hashtag Syllabus, that Marcell is now browsing in the background. There, in that article, we have promised to develop a radical pedagogy approach that would help social justice initiatives write online syllabi of their own, and to do so in a technological framework that would allow that the syllabi, as well as the collections of texts that accompany them, be collectively created, easily preserved, and maintained independent from large digital platforms. We'll come to this in a little bit. As a first such syllabus, we have started building with practitioners, activists, and scholars a collective syllabus on pirate care. The first round of topics in that syllabus were written in November of 2019 during a writing retreat organized by Drugo More, an organization, cultural organization from Rijeka. Throughout 2020, we have continued to add further topics to the syllabus. The syllabus currently includes, and that is pretty much concluded, corpus of the syllabus includes topics of criminalization of solidarity with migrants, sea rescue and care, debt and housing struggles, common in care work and childcare, peer-to-peer social technologies of care, psychosocial autonomy in insurrectionist milieus, community safety from racialized policing, transfeminist hacking, hormone toxicity and bodily sovereignty, gender equality in tech milieus, and finally, politicizing digital piracy. Alongside the topics and respective sessions, which are actually proposals for lessons spent learning something using this or that method, the syllabus also includes an extensive library of all texts referenced in the sessions. To the library and the background ethos of building publications that contain in themselves all the texts they reference will come in a moment. We have launched the Pirate Care syllabus on March 8, 2020 for the exhibition of Bread, Wine, Cars, Security and Peace at Kunsthalle Wien. On March 14th, with the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic in Europe, we have transformed our work on the syllabus into a collective note-taking effort to document organizing of care in response to the crisis. An effort we have titled Flatten the Curve, Grow the Care. What are we learning from COVID-19? With participation of a broader Pirate Care network, we have collected and created a number of notes, instructions, and how-tos that were coming from and were used by community care organizers in Italy, Croatia, the UK, and elsewhere. The notes included information on how to assist people in home isolation, on how to organize solidarity kitchens, on reproductive rights, home violence, and childcare in the quarantine, on mutual aid models for the jobless, for instance, sex workers, write-ups on the implication of the pandemic on disability, environmentalism, and technology. They were immediately made available in English, Italian, German, and Spanish, all a result of a collective effort of our network. The title itself, Flatten the Curve, Grow the Care, specifically Flatten the Curve, referenced the famous graph representing two curves standing for higher and lower rates of contagion, and an unspecified healthcare capacity represented in that graph as a straight line that the ideal pandemic curve should not breach. That's the number of hospital staff and beds that should not be breached. We wanted to highlight how that straight line is never a straight line nor a single line. It actually depicts a decline of society's capacity for care under the relentless neoliberalization and criminalization. Also, much in what has been termed the biggest crisis of care in the century actually wasn't so new. With the pandemic, the pre-existing care crisis, until then visible only on one side of the class, gender, or race divides, suddenly detonated as a generalized social threat. The epidemic has revealed the fundamental dependence of societies on so-called essential services. The frontline workers in health and elderly care, in cleaning and food supply chain, or in transport, whose work is mostly invisible, devalued, and precarious, had no choice but to continue to go to work to not lose employment and income. Largely composed of women, people of color, and migrants, they had to risk infection, and their communities were predictably some of the hardest hit by the disease. Soon, it was clear that those who were in the front line in essential services, those who had no choice but to go to work, and who were hardest hit by the epidemic threat have remained and will likely remain on their side of the class, gender, and race divide. Conversely, all those who could shelter in place have experienced a rapid digitization of all aspects of their lives, transforming their homes into workplaces and surrendering all their social reproduction needs into the hands of tech giants. A radical separation between those two positions, operationalized through network capital, is accelerating further fragmentation of the working class, disposability of their lives, and a diminished capacity to contest a growing techno-capitalist oligarchy. Our initial intent was to organize a camp in summer of 2020 in Croatia to invite people to collectively learn from the syllabus. However, due to the pandemic, that didn't happen. So instead, we have organized an exhibition presenting the syllabus and the practices in it as an exploded view of the publication. Tomorrow, we are opening our final event around pirate care, an exhibition that will present some 30 practices that we deem provide a gamut of practices that fit into the notion of pirate care. And that will pretty much finalize our work on this project. However, parallel with our work on the pirate care syllabus, we have continued to develop our idea of creating a framework of methodologies and tools that would allow social justice movements to collectively and in a technologically sustainable manner document, publish, and archive the knowledge produced in their practices. The formative practice motivating our work on collective documenting, publishing, and archiving is the work we have previously been doing on building and maintaining infrastructures that supports sharing of digital texts. That is the work in letter that we have written together with a number of shadow librarians, amongst others, Dusan, we have called Custodianship of the Knowledge Commons. On this, Marcell will say a few words more.
So yeah, I think that there are like a couple of things we try to do, we continue to do in pirate care, and we used to do before in our work, especially with building the memory of the world library. So for us, there are like a couple of things we are trying to do. We are playing with imaginary. We are trying to play with imaginary and what is possible. And in that sense, we try to show and illustrate how we use technology. And many times also we develop the technology in order to show how we can use that technology. Another kind of aspect of our work is that we see that the source of the problem, the source of the problem of what is possible, what we can do today with the technology, is the restrictive regime of intellectual property. So in our work with the letter in our letter Custodians Online, we try to find the common denominator of all of us, so that we can claim that another kind of world is possible, another kind of internet is possible. So we try to introduce, for example, the custodian. Custodian would be someone who care about internet in that sense. Custodian online is the one who care about online resources. So then we would play a lot with why, with how to address the problem of the restrictive regime of intellectual property. And here we just stand in solidarity with Library Genesis and Science Hub. Absolutely the biggest, the giants of the resistance and of also of imaginary what is possible these days. And with the memory of the world, the software we built was about a library which is possible today, but library which has librarians behind, and then these librarians are just coming back together. So I'll just try to show some of these things which we had in also while developing the platform for publishing Sendpoints later. At that moment, just the prototype which we were doing with the Syllabus Pirate Care. So for example, this is the page where you can see the references. And then if you click on any of the references, okay, we have
a bit of
childcare here in the, so what I'm showing here is that you can see something which is like close to the citation kind of style. And if you click on any of that, you can see that it goes straight into the catalog, which is behind the whole project. And here, just like on Wikipedia, if you click on edit this, you will see that it goes straight into the, it's kind of slow. I don't know why. It goes straight into the Git repository of all of the sources, of all of the materials, how we were building it. And this is the markdown. And this is also where we see that, so the argument against the intellectual property can be about like, or could be built by playing with imaginary, where the software shows like memory of the world, that we can share and we can take care of the catalogs of the books available. But then there is also another one, which is kind of like strong these days, like the argument for the copyright, which pretty much like builds the whole fantasy about the individual author, a genius or someone who's precarious, who's in trouble, so we have to protect them. And most of the authors are in that position, absolutely. So we are not trying to say that that's not true. We just try to show and to make an argument that copyright and intellectual property regime is not the way how to address that. And most of the time, the argument goes, and it invites the authors to be generous with everyone else. Or one of the arguments is that the co-authorship is actually the way to go, so that there is more than one author and things like that. We just feel that the authorship and the author as the part of that imaginary is not really addressing that. So what we are trying to do, and we feel that that's well addressed in decades of the open source collaborative development of software, and that's the latest incarnation of that is like Git. If you don't know about that, maybe we can have it in a later conversation. But this is where we get if we click on edit this. So this is pretty much the same kind of platform which is also used for the software development. And then you can see that here the references, which you can see here, expanded into the kind of citation style with with the links to the catalog. Here it's a little bit a different syntax. So this is pretty much how we are doing this, how we develop that, and then what we can also do, and that's where we try to figure out how to also diversify who's doing this. What is the collective power behind a production of knowledge? So, for example, in this interface, in this like a little platform on top of the Git, you can see that that here, when you say blame, that you can see who was doing what. And then not always we have the roles there. We don't have the named roles, but many times we kind of like find out how to introduce them, and that's part of our methodology. So here we are in the kind of editing part. Here here is the whole like a website which we had here. But then you can see that there is a catalog of all of the things there. But then also what we built, and that's kind of like full integration, is that you could have the whole the print of at any given moment. You can see that now it's calculating all of the pages. So for the PDF, so we basically get the full kind of support for well-paginated, well-designed print, which comes at any given moment of the development. You just go to this URL and it will prepare it for the print. So you can see we have it in the catalog here. In the same catalog which supports a pirate care, there is also a PDF where you can find all of the content. But then we moved a little bit further, and I will try to kind of finish with just a few things which we have here. We moved forward in building the platform. We call it Sendpoints, which, as I said, which tries to illustrate what is possible today. But at the same time, it also tries to address a number of kind of conditions we have now with the technology. So here is the example of the journal, scientific journal in Nubian studies. It's called Otavo, and the issue number 7 was published through Sandpoints. So let me just first show you something which we found very distinctive and very important. So as I showed you with the pirate care, the references are quite easy to make as part of the content published there. And here you can see that there are like 186 references, which are all of the references from that issue, different articles, books scanned exactly for this issue. So what you actually get is the print PDF. Let me see if it's here. So this is like example of the print PDF of that issue. So if you get into any of the articles, you can see the author. If you click on the author, you get to the biography. You have abstract, keywords, but also what you have is like the footnotes, the whole critical apparatus, and then you also have the bibliographies. So we don't know of any other. It's not really like being proud of being first. We don't believe that that's what makes things more valuable. But what we would like to see is that more scientific journals and more issues of scientific journals will bring all of the references with its own content. So this is how the Otavo is done. And if you click even from the PDF, you go straight into the catalog, which is prepared for that issue. So another aspect of the platform is that all of this, so a pirate care, Otavo, a machine listening, and another one which machine listening is a curriculum, which was also built with Sendpoints. All of them are available fully through offline use. So if you just like put the library and the static site, offline HTML site of built with Sendpoints on a USB thumb drive or USB stick, you can just go and use it without any internet. You just need web browser. You don't need to install anything. You just put the USB stick, just kind of like as we used to do in the 90s, you know, like we would have like a floppy disk. You just put your website with all of the HTML or links work because it's relative and things like that. So that's one of the aspects we did here. And we really pay a lot of attention how to actually address it. And I will just like show you that the latest thing, I don't know if it's big enough, but here it shows that this file is open from my hard disk. And if I just click whatever, edit this, it all works offline. So that's what I'm working now on. This is some bug. I can see that that it's, but the whole kind of like a metadata, the whole, it's kind of like the editing is becoming more and more user-friendly. So it's still Markdown, but some of the metadata parts are like better addressed with the user interface. So you could see that it's also almost instantaneous because it's offline. So what we would like to support is the scenarios where you can see everything, which is well prepared with all of the references, well cataloged, which you can print if you need it in a well-designed, well-paginated PDF, but at the same time that you can also edit all of that. So one of the possible scenarios is that you're in a prison. So if you just get that USB stick and you start to use just your browser, you can get all of the content, you can work further with that. Everything will be committed back into the Git. And then if you just give that USB disk to someone else, it can be synchronized somewhere else. Or if a vulnerable group needs to do something and they decide that part of their kind of safety measures or the security protocol that nothing really should go or ever be online and published online, this is the way how you can do that. And we see these constraints as something which gives us more and more kind of autonomy through the technology, but at the same time, even we really enjoy playing with imaginary how things are getting better. There's so many things in the world today which are showing us that the things are actually getting worse and into collapse. So hopefully we will not need it very soon, but at the same time, these kind of aspects, in our opinion, should be addressed by many technologies, because otherwise the things are collapsing. Will also like move the technologies we use out of our hands, out of the scope where we can use them. So I don't know if you want to say,
yeah, maybe just
more?
in reference to archiving, the entire Sendpoints framework is built around file formats which are the longest lasting and are the formats sort of preference for preservation. And those are plain text using Markdown syntax, which is basically a human readable syntax. You don't need a computer to interpret that syntax. HTML, which will be in existence for as long as there is World Wide Web, and PDF, on which our collections or catalogs are built. And with these three formats, without having recourse to a database, we are trying to build an infrastructure also that can be easily moved from server to server, to offline use, and also be made preservable. So going back to social justice movements, that their documentation, archives, publications don't die once there is no longer a sysadmin who will regularly update MySQL or whatever is behind a WordPress instance that they are typically using to document their knowledges. Maybe we end on that note and answer any questions in the panel, which will probably follow shortly.